what interested you in consumer goods?
It really has shown me that there's a path here that is truly unique and something that changes so often. There's never a dull moment. I look at transformations as a combination of needing data, technology, people, and processes. And when I've seen projects not go to plan, it's because...
How do you typically go through a transformation?
Start with why. If you can come up with a reason why you're doing this that resonates with people, if you don't have a good current state assessment, understand where people are today and what they're doing.
We struggle to because we're cleaning up data.
If you're not clear on where your golden source data is coming from, you spend a lot of time spinning.
How do you see AI playing a role here?
There's so much emerging technology with the AI world. That's ultimately where finance is headed. There's some things that just machines are going to be a heck of a lot better at than faster and more accurate than humans.
How do you think about transformation?
When finance transformation, finance is the client. It's no different in business.
What is the number one technical skill for FP&A professionals to master?
Modeling. They have to be able to look at the numbers and
FP&A guy here. Have you ever wanted to level up your FP&A skills? Then check out the FP&A Guy's Ultimate Course Bundle at the FP&AGuy.com. That's the FP&A Guy.com. And use code podcast to save 25%. Get started learning today. Hello, everyone. Welcome to FP&A Tomorrow, where we delve into the world of financial planning and analysis, examining its current state and future prospects. I'm your host, Paul Barnhurst, aka the FP&A Guy, and I will be guiding you through the evolving landscape of FP&A. Each week, we are joined by thought leaders, industry experts, and practitioners who share their insights and experiences, helping us navigate today's complexities and tomorrow's uncertainties. Whether you're a seasoned professional or just starting your journey in FP&A, this show has something for everyone. This week, we are thrilled to welcome to the show Leslie Stuart. Leslie, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Nice to see you again, Paul.
Yeah, good to see you. We're excited to have you. So let me just give a little bit of background for Leslie. We'll jump into our first question. She comes to us from Toronto, Canada. She's the Director of Financial Planning and Analysis. She studied accounting and business and is a qualified CPA. And she's currently leading the finance transformation for Walmart Canada. And I had the opportunity to get to know Leslie, got to work with her on some training projects, and really excited for her to share some of her experiences. So we're going to start with this question. We like to ask every guest this question. What does great FP&A look like for you? What is that?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. There's a lot of traditional FP&A functions that have really evolved into great ones by leveraging more technology, leveraging more data. And that's really where I see these teams excelling. And when I've seen through my career teams doing wonderful things, it's because they're starting to leverage new information, new ways of working with an evolving economy.
So it sounds like one of the things that allows FP&A to great is really learning how to leverage the data to provide better analysis and insights to the business.
Absolutely. Absolutely. When I started out my career, teams were heavily leveraging Excel and they were not necessarily getting into the data concepts. What I'm seeing now is that there's a huge shift towards looking at data, understanding data, leveraging it in different ways, understanding how to pick the right data. That's the most important thing. And to be able to leverage it and make better insights and analysis to support their business.
Yeah, and then I would imagine you worked in some large retail companies. The data's huge, right? You're dealing with billions of transactions in some cases.
Absolutely. And, the concept of garbage in, garbage out really, really resonates in our businesses, and I'm sure in many businesses. When you start to look at how much data there is out there, there's a lot of really crummy data that can really lead you down the wrong path and lead you to wrong business decisions. So it's so critical that you understand the data, understand where it's coming from to be able to drive the business in the right direction. And there's so much out there, and it can be contradictory a lot of the time.
So funny enough, one of the first hire I made as a director is I brought in a data person to help clean up our data in an FP&A role I had. And I still remember one time I asked him about the quality of your data, and his last company was healthcare, where it's critical some of the data had to be right for the things he did. He goes, if this quality of data had been at my last company, he goes, we would have had lawsuits and dead people. I'm like, so just showing the importance in the right situation of the data. I'm like, all right, yeah, our data is pretty bad. It was kind of that confirmation of what I already knew. But I always laughed when he explained it that way, lawsuits and data is important. So why don't, before
Absolutely.
we jump into more of our questions, tell our audience about your background, kind of what you're doing today, your career progression, just a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So as you mentioned off the top, I'm in Toronto, Canada, born and raised. And I started my career in a very traditional accounting firm method and did all of my external auditing hours. I knew that wasn't for me. That was a means to an end for me. And when I decided to leave the professional accounting life, I was working with a recruiter and said, hey, I want to do anything except for auditing. Bring me to something different. And she said, cool, how about operational audit? And I said, well, it's not, that still has the word audit in it. And so I ended up transitioning into an organization ultimately that where I did operational audit, but it was so different than how I had, started my career doing external audits that it really led me down a very fun path through my career where I got to learn so much about the business. So I spent a fair bit of time doing internal audit, where I was doing more operational, a lot in stores, a lot out in the field. I really got a chance to learn the business, which was the really exciting thing for me. I got to do everything from food safety and shrink and derivatives and transportation logistics. I got to see everything, and really was a great foundation for starting off early in my career. Before I transitioned into more FP&A type roles, and ultimately into transformation.
Okay, got it. So it sounds like audit to operational audit to FP&A and transformation roles.
Absolutely.
Great. That sounds like a really good background because you got to learn the business, which in my mind is just invaluable. Anytime you get to
Huge.
really learn those operations, it makes a huge difference in finance.
Huge. Yes.
I'm curious, what interested you in consumer goods? You spent most of your career outside of kind of audit in consumer goods. Why consumer goods?
You know what? It was when I left public accounting, I had been focusing a lot on financial services. And when I moved into retail, it was a little bit of, you know, happenstance and how I ended up in the retail world. But I love the tangible nature of it. I love how dynamic the business is, the customer orientation of it, and really understanding how customer behavior changes the business so much. It really has shown me that there's a path here that is truly unique and something that changes so often that really, there's never a dull moment.
That's good. That's what we want. Want to keep challenged and enjoy it.
Absolutely.
So, when you first moved into FP&A, what interested you in FP&A? Why did you make that switch from kind of the operational audit? Sounds like you really enjoyed that FP&A.
Yeah. You know what? I got into I got into trouble when I was doing operational audit, to be very honest, because I kept on wanting to get into the weeds and help the business and really start to drive more of their processes. And so it ended up in a lot of scope creep at times. So, for me, what I realized that during that time, not only did I get that great foundation for the business, but it really unleashed a lot of curiosity with me in how do I actually help them make processes more efficient? Because I'd get into the weeds in what they were doing. And, I'd keep to the scope of our audits at the time. And I just wanted to do more. And I just got really interested in how do I make this more efficient? How do I make this easier for the business? So ultimately, I had a really wonderful mentor that I still work with today who said, hey, maybe you should just try jumping into the business and actually putting, your recommendations into action and start to implement. So I took the leap and never looked back. It's been great.
Got it. So it sounds like just wanting to do more audit, you identify everything, and then it's up to somebody else to implement that. And you wanted to be involved in that implementation.
Yep. I wanted to do it.
Yep. And it sounds like you've done that a lot with the transformation and process improvements. Is that really kind of from that audit side how you came to want to be involved in process improvement? Is from doing the operational audit and seeing all these things that need to be improved?
Yes, and it's been really a culmination of my experiences throughout my career where, certainly having that strong foundation in processes and controls and risks that really come from that audit background and merging it with my FP&A experience of understanding the realities of the business and how everybody needs to get their work done to really come to a really good juncture of putting the pieces together. So yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And so it sounds like that whole combination kind of really came together. How is FP&A? I'm curious, how has FP&A helped you with doing finance transformations? How does that make you better at doing that part of it?
It's critical until you actually get into the weeds of what those functions do. You don't really understand, and it was one thing to have a bird's eye view from an audit lens, but to actually get in there and do the work and the realities of it, it's not perfect. It's not ever perfect, and sometimes you just have to get to good enough. And so bringing the realities of the concept of good enough, what is good enough to be able to succeed, and moving away from the concept that often comes from my experience on the audit side of looking for those ideal situations.
So you're telling me not all processes are perfect?
Definitely not. I wish, wouldn't that be wonderful if we could make them all absolutely buttoned down? But the reality of it is that there's so much changing in the business and there's so many changing priorities. And sometimes good enough is just where you have to land.
It's just like data, right? There's a cost to being 100% right. Generally, 90% is good enough for almost all the decisions you're going to make. Sometimes 80% is enough, sometimes 70, depending on the data. Sometimes you do need 99 or, as close to 100 as possible, but for many things you don't.
And that's one of the things that when we talk in our transformation teams and across our business, it's about making progress, not perfection. Because perfection is just this enigma that is very difficult to actually obtain, and sometimes just making those baby steps is just good enough.
Yeah, no, I've become a bigger and bigger fan of just make progress. Perfection in many ways is almost a myth, right? Nobody is perfect in many areas. And so it's about just getting a little better every day. Like, I've heard
Yes.
people say practice makes perfect. And I've always loved the quote that intentional practice makes progress. Being intentional in your practice will allow you to progress and learn. You may never reach perfect, and that's okay. So I'm curious, within transformations, do you have a favorite experience from a transformation or a process improvement initiative that you can talk about?
Went through a pretty significant system change in one of my roles, and it was difficult. It was a very challenging implementation and build. Took a while to get the adoption there, and what I distinctly remember is post implementation, and we're going through hypercare, and then the normal stages of hypercare that you're going to run into problems that you didn't experience before, that you weren't anticipating. Totally normal. And it was that first forecast cycle when everybody went, yeah, makes sense. It's working. It's doing what it's supposed to be doing, and we're able to do it efficiently. It just felt like the biggest win after a very long implementation process. It was the best feeling ever.
I could imagine when you just put in a big, huge planning tool and the actual budget goes well versus it's a disaster and everybody's like, why are we using this? And they're wanting to revert to their old processes.
Yeah, and that's a normal change cycle. We absolutely see that all the time. That you get early adoption for some situations, and other ones it can be a struggle. And yeah, there's a bit of friction at those junctures. So it was for me wonderful to see that there was that full adoption that we eventually were able to get to.
And I'm curious, how do you manage to go from those early adopters to, kind of those mid adopters, but particularly the laggards and those that are the change resistant, the ones that are kind of fighting it? How do you get those on board? Because you may not ever get every single one of them on board, but you need the majority for this thing to work? Because usually your early adopters aren't the majority of the team.
No, and very true. So in my experience, what I've found is that to get everybody across the finish line, you really need to be able to center around the individual. And sometimes it really is just sitting with them and, okay, let's do your process together. Let's understand where your challenges are so that they're feeling supported throughout. When you think even taking a step back and understanding why you're doing the change and being able to bring people along the journey and seeing what their challenges are and being able to meet them where they're at and help to bring them across has been, for me, a very successful way to look at it. And it's working with people direct. You have to understand what the individual challenges are. It's not an omnibus solution a lot of the time.
So it sounds like there's a fair amount of even getting down to that individual level and really resolving people's problems, sometimes one person at a time, even to that level.
Definitely. And the implementation that I've most recently been a part of that was the approach that I ended up taking. It really, I feel, helped every level, making sure that everybody felt successful and learning really something that was quite new and very different, and having people feel supported throughout is so important.
And how do you manage that from a resource standpoint? Because I can imagine that can be very difficult. Do you have champions that also help step in, or how do you think about that logistically? Because anytime you start going down to individuals and providing individual help, it substantially increases the commitment of time. How did you manage that?
It's not without a heavy lift. I got to tell you, it's not simple there isn't a single answer to that one, but for myself, I utilized a number of different approaches. One, yes, absolutely. If there were people that were champions that were understanding it, bringing them to sit at the table with it as well, to maybe champion it for others, was very helpful. In some cases, I had to bring in external help to be able to have those process development conversations. It was a combination of approaches that really helped to bring the full team across the finish line, but can't underestimate the importance of that, because if you leave people behind and you don't put in the time to make sure that everybody understands their process, it really deters the entire project.
And I'm sure whether it's one you've run or one you've been involved in, you've seen somewhere they probably have been less than successful in your career. Have you found that's usually because they're not taking the time for the one? Do you think it's that, or is it lack of communication, or what have you typically seen that causes things to, fail or be less than ideal?
You know what? I look at transformations as a combination of needing data, technology, people, and processes. And when I've seen projects not go to plan, it's because people and processes have been underestimated. Full stop. Data and technology, a lot of the time, they're the easier piece to adjust to and to fix. People and processes, if we underestimate the amount of time there, that's where we lose. Those are the hard ones to come back from if you're not really focused on those two elements.
FP&A guy here. Today, I want to talk about the FP&A Guy's Ultimate FP&A Course Bundle. This bundle includes over 10 hours of content, recorded by Ron Montero and myself, many templates, and great lessons to make you a better FP&A professional. The content includes FP&A business partnering, how to manage tough conversations, build world-class relationships, and hold the business accountable. It includes modern Excel, which is a real game changer for the way you'll work in Excel. Excel tables, the gateway to modern Excel. Power Query, a game changer for transforming your manual processes and loading data. And then dynamic arrays. Next, we cover modeling design principles. In this course, we talk about the importance of designing models in a certain way and how important it is that you think about design. And last but not least, driving value through smart analysis. How you can conduct data analysis to be a better FP&A professional. Go ahead and sign up for this bundle at thefpnaguy.com That's the FP&A guy.com. Use the code podcast to save 25%. Get started learning today. And frankly, that makes sense to me. That's kind of what I've seen in my career. And it's why I like to think you want to get your people, your processes right, and then technology is your enabler. Like you mentioned, great FP&A. Great FP&A departments have that access to the data. They've allowed technology to enable them to accomplish more because they've hired the right people, they developed the right processes, and now they've used technology to make themselves more efficient. And so that totally aligns with what I've seen. I would agree with you. It's usually a people or process issue, underestimation there. Occasionally you select the wrong technology, but most of the time, most technology can work for what you need. You might have to change your processes. You might have to have some things you don't like because no technology meets all our needs. There's always trade-offs, but I think it's rarely technology that's the problem.
Agreed.
And so talk a little bit about just the process. How do you typically go through a transformation process? How do you think about that when someone comes to you and say, hey, I want you to lead this process? How do you go about that?
Start with why. Why are we doing this? And this goes back to the conversation of people and process, because if you can come up with a reason why you're doing this that resonates with people, it's a really great starting point. And when there's something in it for the individual, and I don't mean just from an organizational perspective, because it can be, hey, this is a cost savings opportunity. At an individual level, let's be honest, most people don't care. I mean, they care about the company, but they don't really care if it's not impacting them directly, if it's not making things easier, if it's not making their day more efficient. You need to find the why. And so that's always number one for me. Start with why. And then it's making sure that you've got the right leadership engagement to be able to support on a project. And then everybody is aligned with why we're doing this, when we're doing this, how we're doing this, so that you've got the support and the backing to be able to succeed. Those are always my two starting points. Beyond that, it's really a lot of it is around making sure that we've got the right requirements, the right design, overestimating on the planning. I always say that you've got to really double down on your planning for larger projects and make sure that you've got the right setup to begin with, because it's really difficult to go back and costly in a lot of cases to go back and fix things at the tail end of a project.
Yeah, no, and I've heard with some of the large software, they're very malleable. You can do anything you want, but once you've done it all, changing it becomes extremely expensive and prohibitive for some of these tools.
Definitely.
And so if you don't have it right, I mean, that's, I think sometimes the challenge, particularly with planning tools, why you often see people go back to Excel is you have major changes in the business. And now all of a sudden this isn't as agile as you want it to be to adjust. So I know that's often a challenge that people run into, whether it's an ERP or planning tool or whatever it might be, especially the larger the company, the more customization you've done.
And you can over engineer really, really fast. And I've seen that happen, and and had to go backtrack and say, oh, geez, well, that's really way too much for what we need to do. It's too big of a change for people. I've been on that other end of it. It's not a lot of fun. So, I one of the analogies that I use all the time is, we don't need to be building the Porsche. We need to build the Civic. And it's nothing against the Civic. They're great cars, but we don't often need the Porsche. We just need something to get from A to B. So let's start there. And then you can start to add on all the bells and whistles afterwards, but start with simple.
Yeah. Build the basics that can be reliable and then add as you go.
Yep.
Now,
Yep.
How do you think about phases with projects? Are you one of those that likes to really start with little phases and build, or do you try to do all of it at once? I've seen phases work well. How do you think about that?
Yeah, I've done what I would call a traditional waterfall approach, which is just do everything at once. And I really don't like doing that. I've done that, and I find that you spend a lot of time developing and not seeing a lot, and then you get to the end and you're like, well, that's not really what I wanted, and then you have to backtrack anyways. The projects that I'm involved with now, we lean much more towards an agile approach where you get those iterations and opportunity to provide feedback throughout. I find those so much more successful. You're able to engage the team throughout and make sure that it's building what they ultimately want, because it's not about the Leslie tool. I don't need the tool built for me. I need it built for ultimately what I consider my customers in finance. So I want to make sure that it's what they're looking for.
It doesn't matter how much you like it if 90% of the people you support don't like it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
No, makes sense. And I know you've been involved in, different implementations. One of them is a new planning tool. What did you learn from that around, particularly in the planning during the process of that? Any advice you would offer, things you do different if you're going to do it again?
Getting a really good lens on current state. That one, again, a lot of it is learning through trial and error, and I do current state all the time now, but when I've done it in the past where it's not been as smooth, ultimately you can get to success with it. But if you don't have a good current state assessment, understand where people are today and what they're doing so that you understand how big of a change you're looking to implement. There's a tendency, even best laid plans, and we've got finance teams who are exceptionally ambitious and very talented, and they want to do everything, and they want to put everything inside of a system or tool. When you do a really solid current state assessment, you understand very clearly where they're starting from. And if they're starting from a very, very basic, Excel offline version, which is what a lot of our teams I see starting from, and they're trying to build that Porsche, it really highlights very quickly that you need to dial it back.
On the current state, how do you go about documenting that? Are you recommend flow charting at all? Do you write SOPs? You'll meet with everybody. What's your kind of typical process you walk through to document? And how do you know when you have a good understanding of current state? Because it feels like no matter how much you do in a project, there's always something that comes out where you're like, oh, I wish you would have told me that a week ago or a month ago or whenever.
I've done it with process flow diagrams. Absolutely. I've done it point form, and less about the form of it and more about just being able to document and really have a clear view to it. For me, it's being able to play back to teams and say, okay, is my understanding of this correct? Does this make sense to you? What am I missing? And being able to do that, revolution with them and making sure that we've got the key pieces. There's always things that creep up. I mean, again, that progress over perfection concept, there's going to be a good enough view of it that as long as you've got the big rocks, you're usually in decent shape to be able to determine what a future state should look like.
And how long? I mean, obviously, it depends on the size of the project, number of people, but how much of the typical project is spent in that current state? Like if you were to say of a total transformation project, do you have a feel for typically kind of roughly how much of it is spent in documenting current state?
It doesn't have to be significant. Obviously, it depends on each project and the complexity of the process that you're doing. But, I lump it in with the entire planning phase of a project. So, maybe that's 20, 30% of your time. It can be significant. And I think that's the really important piece, to be able to get those planning elements done early on. And it incorporates the current state. So even as they're building their requirements and what they want built into any new process, new tool, whatever it is that you're doing, to be able to relate it back to, and this is what you do today, so that there's a constant discussion on change. So that, again, it's bringing the people and the processes together early on so that you have a very clear line of sight. And most importantly, our teams, the customers, also have very clear line of sight to what's changing in their world.
That makes a lot of sense to me. I get what you're saying, is that importance of that line of sight and really that constant communication throughout the planning process. I'm curious, when it comes to these transformations, how do you ensure that you don't just transform the software, right? You got skill set and culture and training and all those things. How do you make sure that part of it happens? Not just the focusing on the people to say, hey, here are the changes in the communication, but sometimes there may, in transformations, you often need to upgrade the skill set. Sometimes you may need to make some culture changes. So how do you incorporate that in the overall kind of transformation process?
Yeah, it differs by project. So I've been involved in some projects where just even training on change management was critical, right? You have to understand where your teams are starting from. And if you're coming from a team that is change resistant or just hasn't even undergone a lot of change in their roles, you have to start with some of the basics to be able to set them up to succeed. In other situations, what I've experienced is, we're moving into, much more modernization, digitization of processes that create efficiencies. So there's an opportunity to enhance other skill sets that they've not been able to focus on as much. And, we've certainly worked on communications and other pieces that are really opportunities to double down on what teams are doing today and replacing, existing, I would call them, mundane processes that are getting automated with things which enhance the ability to partner with their business.
So really helping them see the skill sets and the things that will allow them to be the better business partner and try to remove that mundane. And so
Yes.
training on something like that, the higher level responsibilities that we all want to spend more time on, but often we struggle to because we're cleaning up data.
A lot of time is spent cleaning up data, a lot of data validation, reconciliation of different data sources. If you're not clear on where your golden source data is coming from, you spend a lot of time spinning. And, I've been in that role where I've been the one spinning. And so I know what it's like. And, and it can be very frustrating. And you spend a lot of time doing things that are not value added. So when you're able to get to processes which eliminate the need or reduce the need to be spending time on things like that, it's amazing what you can unlock with really talented teams. And I've worked with so many great people and so many great teams that to be able to start to see them unleashing and stopping doing things that just don't add a ton of value, to be able to do focus on much more insights and analytics is very powerful.
Speaking of insights and analytics, how do you see AI playing a role here? What are you seeing? I'm sure you guys are doing a lot around studying AI in your company and figuring that out. So how are you thinking about it?
Yeah, the way I look at it is there's so much emerging technology with the AI world, whether you're looking at, Gen AI, whether you're looking at any other type of machine learning. It's the way of the future. I mean, that's ultimately where finance is headed. And we think about how we can do our jobs more efficiently, effectively. There's some things that just machines are going to be a heck of a lot better at, than faster and more accurate than humans. And so to our earlier point of, how do you enhance some of those other skills? There's some things that just humans are really great at as well. So how do we find that right balance so that teams are, people are not going to go away from the finance function, but how do you use tools like machine learning, Gen AI, to be able to do your job more effectively, to allow yourself time to be able to be a better business partner?
Looking to level up your career and build skills that make you stand out to FP&A hiring managers? How about earning a certificate from a world-renowned business school? Wharton Online and Wall Street Prep have partnered to create an 8-week online financial planning and analysis certificate program. You'll learn the art of forecasting, analysis, business partnering, and financial storytelling from Wharton Online's world-class faculty, coupled with first-hand exposure to technical and interpersonal skills with real-world applications as practiced in top corporations. Space is limited, so level up your career today and use the discount code TheFPAGuy300 to receive $300 off tuition. That is the FPA Guy 300 to receive $300 off tuition. Learn more by going to wallstreetprep.wharton.upenn.edu. Yeah, makes sense to me. I like how you said the jobs aren't going away. The skill sets change, what we need to do change, but there are definitely things where a computer is much better than we are, right? Processing billions of transactions. Not something I want to do.
No.
Right? Large data sets, finding patterns. There's many things like that the system, as long as it's trained right, is much better at identifying. It allows us to focus on areas where human judgment is needed, where relationships, empathy, whatever it may be, is needed, that isn't so easy for an AI or a computer to do.
Definitely. And that's where, when you can go back to your business partners with very firm insights on been able to take this huge data set and look at the trends that I'm seeing, look at the decisions that we can make more effectively to drive the business. Hugely powerful. And our teams don't need to stay up till midnight to be able to process that level of data. A machine can spit it out really quickly.
I've done a few of those up till midnight things. I'm
Yeah, we
guessing you
all
all
have.
probably have. Yeah, it's part of finance budget and middle of the night. Why doesn't this tie? And you're like, I'm going to plug it. I'm done. I'm not staying up any longer. Yep, we've all been there.
We all
Is
have.
there maybe an experience you've seen like where the company gained an insight after transformation from better data where it, made a real difference to the company that you could share? Maybe something where, either helped the bottom line or revenue or whatever that thing might be, but something where you saw, hey, now that we have this data, we found this real value added insight.
Yeah, I've seen, through some of the system implementation work that I've done, just unlocking different levels of data that previously would have taken a ton of time to be able to process, and being able to make decisions in different dimensions. And that's the fun thing about working in systems, is the dimensionality that you're able to view. They're able to drive different levels of the P&L that were previously either very manual. Now they have at their fingertips, and I've seen them do really incredible work with teams to be able to get to a lens of granularity that was previously not at their disposal.
That's one of the best things of a planning tool. I love Excel. Spreadsheets aren't going anywhere. Excel, Google Sheets, they're fabulous, but they don't have that multi-dimensionality that you can get from, planning tool. It allows you to really access a lot of that at a different level. Yeah, you can do a little bit you can do some with a pivot table and different things. But again, I agree with you that really being able to dig in and slice things in ways that were extremely difficult, if not, impossible to do without the right system, without a system that's designed with the right processes and people.
Yes. Yeah. And it's especially for, I've seen it with growing areas of the business where, when you have a systemized approach to it, they're able to dig into some of the details in really incredible ways to be able to go back to business partners and give them insights.
Yeah, and it usually you can go back a lot quicker than when you
Much,
have to. And
much
that's the other
faster.
real benefit, is much closer to, being able to make near real time decisions.
Absolutely, they can.
I'm curious, when we talk transformations, often it feels like many digital transformations have failed. We've been talking about it in finance, I don't know, for what, 20 plus years. And for the longest time, it felt like people viewed the transformation as an event. Hey, we just got to get through this digital transformation. And to me, it feels like it should be more evolutionary. It's not a revolution. You don't have a revolution and move on to the new thing. You really continue to evolve. How do you think about transformation? How do you view it?
Yeah, I look at it exactly the way that you explained it. And, when you think about in our day-to-day lives, especially digitally, things are always transforming. There's always a new iPhone, there's always a new technology, something's always coming up. It's no different in business, really. And I think we're seeing an evolution in the way that people look at transformations now, because I agree, when I first started doing this, it was always a big event, and that can actually garner a lot more anxiety across people, right? And thinking about, oh gosh, I've got to go through this massive organizational change to be able to get to the other side, whatever that is. And when we start to look at things in small increments and just say, okay, we're just going to look at this, and we're going to, and you're going to understand why you're doing it, because there's a benefit to you. And you start to look at it in little chunks. What it does is it provides people with comfort that this is not meant to be this massive time consuming exercise all the time, and that there's benefit for them at the end. And I see that when we start to make those small incremental changes, it doesn't feel like this enormous elephant to overcome.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of often making a bunch of small bets is better than a big bet. And I think there's something similar with tools, starting on small little things and improving, like you mentioned, versus trying to waterfall and do everything at once versus being agile. And that can be true for the entire process, not just the system side of it, of taking that agile approach and continuing to constantly improve. Because like you said, technology is always changing. I'm sure there's some new technology that came out today that we'll be hearing about soon. Right? It feels like every day there's something.
Yep. And I think the more that people get accustomed to ongoing change, the easier it is to adopt the change. It doesn't become this overwhelming task. It's just, oh, okay, well, this is going to change, but I see the benefit in it for myself. And if we always go back to the, why am I doing this? Why do we want to do this? And oftentimes I look now to my finance customers as the leader of, you tell me what you want to change. What are your pain points? And that shift of thou shalt and pushing down change all the time to, you tell me what you need. And then let me see if I can help to find a solution. And it really evolves the relationship and how we think about transformation so that it's starting bottoms up a lot of the time and not always pushed down.
I love how you said that, because what it makes me think of is, when we partner with the business, we're not very effective if we just push it down from finance. Here's how we're going to do things, versus if we understand their pain points and we focus on solving them. So it sounds like that's the approach you're taking transformation, which is what we're taught we should do to be a good business partner. I mean, so if it works with our business, it should work with finance. We're not different.
It's no different. I look at, because I've come through, very different client relationships, but the similarity, whether it's you're working at a firm and you've got a client, or you're working in internal audit and your business is your client, FP&A business is your client. And then, in finance transformation, finance is the client. So, that is a common thread throughout pretty much any role. There's always a support function associated with it. And if I'm constantly coming down and pushing change down to the teams that I work with and just telling them this is what you're going to do, it doesn't go over well. And I'd much rather come with a solution-oriented discussion with my customers so that they are able to succeed and feel like it's something that, that they've asked for. It's the change that they've wanted throughout all of this.
Makes sense. So I want to ask one more question just before we move on to the next section here, kind of a standard section we have on just some general FP&A questions. Any additional thoughts you want to share to the audience about finance transformations? Any last thoughts you'd like people to be left with?
Yeah, one of the other things that, I see in my role and in transformation roles in general, there's an increasing need for translation. And what I mean by that is, I partner in my role now and in prior roles more and more with technology teams, right? Regardless of whether it's for a system or some emerging technology or understanding data, and being able to talk the language of those teams and marrying it with the finance language is absolutely critical. And it's one of those skill sets across finance in general. I see more and more of my customer teams being more literate in that. And, from a transformation lens, that's a key part of my role, is to help marry the different languages, because they are. And, that they talk in a very different way about often the same things, and being able to partner together to figure out how do we find the best solution. That translation role is so critical.
100%. I've seen it again and again where somebody gives you requirements for a report. They don't know anything about the data. There's nobody there to translate it. You pull it and they're like, this isn't what I want. The numbers are all wrong. Well, this is what you told me you wanted. No. This is what I meant by that. And you start having that conversation back and forth. And it's very true. We're definitely seeing more and more of a need to bridge that gap. I've seen it referred to as the FP&A architect, so to speak, role. And it speaks between data and technology and the processes and things that you can help bridge that gap.
Yes, definitely.
I appreciate that one. All right. So this next section is, we ask you a couple FP&A questions. We're just looking kind of for quick answers. I have 5 that I'm going to ask you to see what you think on each of these. So the first one I'm going to start with is, what is the number one technical skill for FP&A professionals to master?
Modeling. They have to be able to look at the numbers and generate insights.
All right. What is the number one soft skill for FP&A professionals?
Communication. If you can't communicate and you can't understand, what your business partners need and what finance requires, you'll always be at a stalemate.
Yeah, communication modeling definitely right up there at the top. Those are great ones. What is the one software you cannot live without in FP&A?
Excel. as much as we talk about systems and the need for them, Excel is never going to go away. It is too flexible. Our teams will always use it. So critical.
Excel. I always like to say, even if you have a planning tool, that doesn't mean Excel goes away.
No, definitely not.
They coexist. They're both have strengths and weaknesses. And then, are you currently using generative AI? And if so, how?
Yes, I love using Gen AI. I've used it for research. I've used it for honing my communication skills, and just even using it for generating emails and communications that are more effective. I use it all the time. Love it.
Great. No, that's wonderful. I'm just curious. Do you have a certain Gen AI you like to use? Like you're using ChatGPT mostly, Microsoft Copilot.
Internally within the organization, we have one so that we're not sharing out private information. But I mean, personally, I use it too, and I use ChatGPT for a lot of stuff. I find it very helpful.
Great. And then last one, this is kind of a fun question we recently asked. If you could wave a magic wand and change one thing about FP&A, what would you change?
I would love to see more integrated data and processes.
Spoken like a true transformation. That doesn't surprise me.
Staying true to brand.
There you go. Yes, you stayed on brand there. I'll give you an A for brand marketing. Good job. All right. This next section is the get to know you section where we ask some personal questions just to get to know you a little better before we wrap up. So the first one, tell me about a favorite hobby or passion you have.
This is one of those things that has evolved over time. I've got two young kids who are very active in sports. So I am a very active cheerleader as a result. So that is where I spend a lot of my time when I'm not at work, at sporting events, and thoroughly enjoy it. And when I have additional downtime, I love to read.
Great. So any particular sport? Do you have a favorite?
Oh, that's like picking your favorite kid. I can't. And if my kids listen to this, they're going to know. So I'm going to say all the ones that my children play, I love equally.
Well done. All right. What is one book, speaking of reading, you like to read when you have time, that you would recommend to our audience? Is there a book you'd recommend?
Yes, I've recommended this to a ton of people recently. Smart Brevity. It is, when we talk about communication skills, this one I found so helpful. Really very tangible techniques that are quick wins to be able to communicate more effectively, more efficiently.
I need to read that. That's one Ron Montero, as you know, my training partner, read recently. He's been trying to get me to read it. I haven't done it yet, but
it's a quick one. It's a short book, so it's a good weekend read. Mm-hmm. Me too. It's brief. It lives up to its name.
What is your favorite travel destination? If you could go anywhere in the world tomorrow, where are you going?
Italy.
Why Italy?
That's an easy one for me. I love to travel, and I don't get to do it as much as I would like to now with children in sports, but that was definitely a highlight trip that I have taken in the past.
Awesome. Yeah, I'd love to go to Italy. I haven't been, but I've heard it's beautiful.
It's wonderful.
So if you could have dinner with one person in the world, who are you picking and why?
Well, I'm gonna go a little off track with this one because of how busy I am in my life, and I would actually choose to go out with my husband in Italy. I'm going to pair up those two elements because I don't feel like I get to see him as much because we're out all the time.
You're not the first one to pick a spouse. What else is like? Of course, my wife first, but if I'm not taking her, then I'm taking, and I just got to laugh. So
on that note, I would really love to meet Oprah. I think she has a wonderful way of connecting with people, and really her emotional intelligence is out of this world. would love to learn from her.
So you said Oprah. I was going to say that's also the answer Ron Montero gave. He mentioned Oprah as well a few weeks ago on the show. So you're the second person to have now said Oprah. All right. Last question before we finish here. If you could offer one piece of advice to FP&A professionals to be a better business partner, what advice would you give?
I would just say be curious, ask lots of questions, learn about the business, and just be a continuous learner. We never stop learning. We never stop honing our skills, and just keep on honing the craft.
Love that. So basically be curious, keep learning, keep developing.
Definitely.
Fabulous advice. And if someone wants to learn more about you or get in contact with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
LinkedIn.
Shocker. I never get that one. Well, thank you so much for joining, Leslie. It's a real pleasure to have you on the show. I appreciate you carving out a few minutes today, and really excited to share this with the audience.
Wonderful. It's been wonderful to chat with you today, Paul.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Thanks for listening to FP&A Tomorrow. If you enjoyed the show, please leave us a 5-star rating and a review on your podcast platform of choice. This allows us to continue to bring you great guests from around the globe. As a reminder, you can earn CPE credit by going to earmarkcpe.com, downloading the app, taking a short quiz, and getting your CPE certificate. To earn continuing education credits for the FPAC certification, take the quiz on Earmark and contact me, the show host, for further details.